Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today we are both very excited to be talking to you about Darren Aronofsky's critically acclaimed film, The Wrestler.
Great to meet you.
1, 2, round!
Really good. You really brought it.
Thank you, thank you.
You hang in there. You got a lot of ability.
Have you ever seen a one-trick pony and feel so happy and free? If you ever
Well, I was wondering if I could get some more work.
All I got is weekends. Isn't that when you sit on other dudes' faces?
Have you ever seen a one-legged dog?
Have a beer with me?
One
beer.
If you've ever seen
You have a daughter?
Oh, my daughter, she don't like me very much.
You should call her.
And you seen me.
What do you want from me?
I'm an old, broken-down piece of meat, and I deserve to be all alone. I just don't want you to hate me.
And before, and you seen me, but I
2 words. Rematch.
Bring it. You know, with a little luck, this could be my ticket back on top.
Tell me, friend, can you ask for anything?
80s man, best ever.
Guns N' Roses.
Crew.
Yeah, then that Cobain had to come around and ruin it all.
90s sucked.
90s sucked.
These things that have comforted me, I drive away. My only faith's in the broken bones and bruises I display.
You know, the only place I get hurt is out there.
I'm really here.
This life, you can lose everything you love, everything that loves you. A lot of people told me that I'd never wrestle again. The only one who's going to tell me when I'm through doing my thing is you people here.
Tell me, what do you think? What do you think about this? Eh? That'll work. Come here.
Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. So The Wrestler is a 2008 film, as you said. It was directed by Darren Aronofsky. It stars Mickey Rourke, Marisa Tomei, Evan Rachel Wood. And the synopsis from IMDb is as such. A fated professional wrestler must retire, but finds his quest for a new life outside the ring a dispiriting struggle. It's a pretty good, short but sweet synopsis.
Short but sweet.
So I watched this once before in the cinema. You had not. This was a first time watch for you, correct?
That's correct.
What did you think?
I don't use the term lightly, but I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's just one. I'll put it this way. I don't very often in my life look at a piece of art and say, I wish I had made that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's just such a remarkable piece of filmmaking on so many levels. And I'm excited to talk about it with you. I realize that I don't know enough about film to really go as deep as this film goes. Like, you can talk about it on a metaphorical level with the story and the themes explored in the story. You can talk about it on a technical level. For example, I know that the vast majority of this film shot on a single, it's like a 12 millimeter lens. It's like a pocket camera. It's a handheld, right? It's mostly natural lighting, not a bunch of fancy lighting setups in this. There's just so much to talk about. And I feel like if I really knew filmmaking deeply, that it would be rich all the way down. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit frustrating to intuit everything going on in this film and be here talking with you about it in a way that I feel like is, at least in part, I'm going to be like Chris Farley being like, oh, you remember that part when like,
That was awesome.
that was awesome. But I think we could do a little bit better than that. You had already told me that this was a film that you admired. What was it about? What do you admire about this film?
Well, so I've said this before on this podcast. Darren Aronofsky is one of those directors for me that he's not made a bad film. I still haven't seen The Whale, and I still haven't seen Noah, which we talked a little bit about that. So, but everything else I've loved. And I think it's pretty rare for a director to have no misses, even greats like Spielberg. Now, Aronofsky hasn't directed a ton of films. He doesn't have a huge filmography, but everything that he's done has been so impressive to me. And when a lot of times when they'll start talking about a new project, like when this started being discussed before there was a trailer or anything, and it's like, oh, he's going to do this movie about a wrestler. And I thought, I don't really like wrestling. Do I want to watch a movie about a wrestler? And the same thing sort of with Black Swan. It's like, I don't know anything about ballet. Am I going to like a movie about, and it was amazing. And the same thing with this. So I've said many times, he is a director that, for me, a trailer, all it would need to be is just a black screen with white text, his name on it. The next Darren Aronofsky movie, and I'm going to want to watch it, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the way this is shot, it's shot. So you compare this to something like Black Swan, which is pretty stylized, and there's some special effects and that kind of thing in that movie. Whereas this is shot very much like a documentary. It's very stripped down. There's not a lot of fancy, maybe in terms of shots, but there's not really special effects per se in this. I think Mickey Rourke did a tremendous job here. I mean, he's just amazing. And I should have looked this up beforehand. I know he received nominations. I don't know. It was only nominated for 2 Oscars, the movie. We can come back to that. But I believe he was nominated for an Oscar, but did not win. Mickey Rourke. But, he was kind of born to play this role because he's a guy that early in his career, he was almost sort of like a pretty boy actor. And now, in real life, much like the character, he seems kind of broken and beaten down, and all that. I think it's just a great story that you have this guy who was, and we see him at the end, I mean, literally at the end, that he was once, sort of a star wrestler, and now he's pretty much homeless and works in a deli, and it's Rocky, but even more, it's Rocky without the happiness, basically, because even though Rocky loses at the end, there's still some, he's kind of a loser that things start to go well for him. And I mean, Mickey Rourke, we meet him at a time that he's lost. But
it's very much like Rocky in that the point of Rocky's journey is to take a beating.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's not the triumph in Rocky is he doesn't beat
Apollo
Creed, but he goes the distance with Apollo Creed.
Never
like
give up.
Apollo Creed beats the crap out of him, and Apollo Creed doesn't knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
So he loses that fight, but the triumph for him is that he can take that beating. And I think as a working class metaphor, that this is the same sort of thing. Like his job is to take a beating for these crowds, right? And I think, again, this is one of those places where I don't feel like I have thought and read about this movie enough to really grasp the profundity of this message. But there's so much of the American metaphor, of the American working class metaphor in this film. Of at one point, I mean, he lives in a trailer park, right? Where he didn't make the he didn't make the rent. He doesn't even own the trailer. He's renting the trailer from the guy, and he's locked out of it one night because he hasn't paid rent. And then the kids at the trailer park love him, and he's always horsing around with the kids. He's actually quite a friendly, gentle guy. And in one scene, one of the kids from the trailer park is sitting in his trailer with him, and they're playing Coleco or Nintendo or something like that, and it's a wrestling game. And there is he's a Hulk Hogan figure,
right?
Without the television success of Hulk Hogan. But they're playing a video game, and the first thing is like, oh, that's sort of nostalgic and sad. And then you go, wait a minute, they made a video game about this guy, and he's living in a trailer park, right? I mean,
yeah.
Somebody made money off of this video game, but it clearly wasn't him, the subject of the video game. And to me, that moment kind of encapsulated. There's no way or the Marisa Tomei character, there's no way for them to win. Like, they find themselves in this kind of trough where the only thing available to them is to sell sex or violence as entertainment. And there isn't an avenue out. You know, I mean, he works at a grocery store, but he's like loading boxes and working at the delis, you know? And so I think in some ways, and then the audiences, the people that are coming into these places, are paying for a kind of escape. It's all pretty depressing. Although I don't actually feel like one of the things that I think is a real triumph about this movie is, while it is a tragedy, and by the way, spoiler, we're going to spoil these movies that we talk about if you've never listened to us before. While it is a tragedy, I don't feel like the beat-to-beat storytelling in this movie feels heavy and leaden and depressing. It feels occasionally hopeless, but he chooses to stay in the ring, to die doing the thing that he loves, right? And while that is a depressing thought, right? And while he doesn't make that connection with Marisa Tomei at the end, his choice to, he seems to find a real joy in the ring. And that is the intensity of that emotion, despite the peril, I think, comes through more strongly enough in there that you don't, Requiem for a Dream, that's a hard movie to watch.
Sure.
There's just not a lot of sunshine in that movie. And you end that movie thinking like,
Yeah.
I don't know when I'm going to be happy again.
We've talked about that before, that's one of the greatest movies that I've only watched once.
And I think in this film, he manages to deal with some really depressing, really heavy themes, but do so in a way that feels relatable and not happy per se. But the moments of joy that these characters find feels incredibly genuine and incredibly infectious. They're singing. He talks Marisa Tomei into going out for one beer. And they're playing some 80s songs on the jukebox, and they're singing and he's sort of dancing, and they have this moment of genuine joy together that looks so easy and so natural. That's really hard to get on film. And this whole thing is shot with this kind of handheld camera. You said it looks like a documentary. It does. It feels like the camera person, it makes us as the audience feel like we're part of the conversation, like we're standing there with them. And rather than have a bunch of fancy light setups and scenic setups and camera setups that distance us, that make it feel presentational, right? And what we come to sort of expect from movies. This does have that feeling of like you're just another person walking alongside of him, taking this all in as if you're also part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me all the more impressed with the performances that he gets out of these actors. Marisa Tomei, I've always been a fan of Marisa
Sure.
Tomei. She does some really terrific acting work in this, and I think her acting work is almost eclipsed by how sexy she is in this movie.
Mhm.
Like
I think she was 43 when this was made.
She's an exotic dancer, right? So she
Mhm.
spends a significant amount of her screen time. I'd say at least half of her screen time in just a G-string up on stage with a stripper's pole, and it's so she's so committed to the part, and it's just she's so literally exposed on camera. I mean, she looks amazing. She's gorgeous. She doesn't look 40, whatever, or
Mhm.
I wish I had been in that kind of shape when I was 40. But it's not just that, it isn't. It sells that's what she's selling, but then we get to know her character as Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke's character is making advances on. He's genuinely sweet on her.
Mhm.
And we get to start to see the woman that is, why she has such a protective, sort of suit of armor on around her heart. And it all just rings incredibly true to me, She's
Yeah.
a single mother and she doesn't want to, tell him that. Of course, then we find out he wasn't a great husband. He wasn't a great father. And we meet Evan Rachel Wood plays his daughter.
She's really great too.
Another terrific performance. And, a different kind of movie would give us these sort of treacly, sweet, a reunion with the daughter, and a new chapter of life. But people can't change on a dime.
And he
like
messes
that.
it up, Yeah.
He messes it up in the way that he doesn't mean to.
Mm-mm.
Genuinely, sincerely doesn't mean to, but he does.
Because, like you said, he's not a bad guy, really.
He doesn't have ill intent.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, from what we know about him, we see, pretty clearly a bad father. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
doesn't, I mean, he lets himself off the hook to a certain degree, but he doesn't deny it. Like when he's apologizing to his daughter, he says, I left. I deserve to be alone. I just don't want you to hate me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it was so good. I
wondered about the performances, and I wonder, what your thoughts are on this, being an actor. I don't know enough about how Darren Aronofsky works, if he sticks to the script or if he allows his actors to ad lib, but everything seems so naturalistic in this, like the speech that he sort of gives at the end before the last fight, and he's talking up there about how, all the problems that he's had and everything. I wonder if that was written or if he just said that, you know what I mean, off the cuff, because it just sounds so sincere and real and doesn't sound like scripted,
Yeah, I have no idea, but I have no idea how he works. Some of it, I think, it's definitely scripted, because I don't think you get performances like that, shot like this, without rehearsing them the way you would rehearse a play.
But also like the scene in the deli when he's kind of riffing with the people, and he's handing out the it seems almost like some of those people did not seem like actors. It
Right.
seems almost like they just had real customers coming in. And because I was watching that and I thought, I wonder if they just shot this in a real grocery store. They just had people coming in, almost not knowing it was a movie, because it just seems so realistic.
Yeah, I don't know. You should be able to Google that. My gut is like, my gut would be no. I think my gut is that those are actors and they had a set. And for example, people who aren't actors, you wouldn't, they would look at the camera.
Sure, yeah. That's true.
And you think that's a little thing, but you know, if you're not an actor, like, oh yeah, you want to be in a movie? Very difficult not to look directly at the camera.
Yeah.
Because you're curious about it.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think those people are probably all actors, but I think he definitely directed them in a style that's like, you know, this is as slice of life as it gets, you know, and I want, you know, the job I want you people to do is I want you to know what you've done that day. I want to know, you know, what did you have for breakfast, and, you know, what did you do in the morning? And you know, what did you do right before you got here, and what's going on in your life? And it can be whatever you're doing in your life, but I want you to have a sense of your day and where this falls in your day, and what was the last thing you did before you walked in here, and what's the next thing you got planned once you get the stuff from the deli counter and you leave. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and not everybody works with extras that way, but I think that you don't get that kind of specificity without paying attention to everybody. And you can't shoot this way, this kind of hovering, you know, I'm camera standing right next to you, documentary style thing, without thinking about all 360 degree everybody in the shot. And I think Mickey Rourke probably does work kinetically, like I think he probably tries to mix it up and keep it fresh and surprise himself with different there's one where he's getting a little amped up or whatever, and he's like kind of banging on the counter, and he's raising his voice, and he's like being a little borderline inappropriate earlier on, and I thought, I bet they did a few takes of this, and you know, this is one of those kind of mix it up takes, but
yeah,
it works.
Oh yeah. Was this movie I always think it's kind of interesting, you know, when you watch a movie that's been out for quite a while, because this came out in 2008, and you're aware of, was this what you expected it to be, or was it different than what you were expecting? Or
I didn't really know anything about it. I knew it was Mickey Rourke, and I knew it was about a wrestler. I hadn't even watched the trailer, frankly.
Oh, okay.
But 2008 was the year my son was born, so I just wasn't.
You weren't watching a lot of movies.
I wasn't. And I mean, there wasn't a nearby movie theater. I had moved in with Rachel, and so we lived out in Williamsburg, and there's a couple of cool theaters around there now, but I would have had to gone into Manhattan or further out, and this wasn't a period when I was watching a lot of movies, but
sure.
You know, it was Aronofsky, so I expected it to be interesting. I wasn't like, oh, this doesn't suck. I mean, I thought it was going to be good, and you had said it's really good, so I was like, then I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, it had 98. So I'm like, okay. But beyond that, I didn't know any of I didn't know it was going to be shot in that style. I didn't realize it was going for something so naturalistic. I was blown away by the performance. I'm not a big fan of Mickey Rourke. It was like, oh, Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to be like, what's the big deal? He's good on screen.
Sure.
But until I saw him in this performance, did I say like, wow, that is remarkable. He vanishes into this role. You buy it.
Oh yeah.
You buy it completely that this is what he's done his whole career, and there's kind of nothing else he can really do. You know, it isn't the great thing about this movie to me is that it manages to talk about sort of big themes of what it is to be an American consumer, and what it is to be part of the kind of working class, and to feel exploited, and to feel hopeless, and just to feel like this is what, like, you know, the uncomplaining suffering of just day-to-day American life, where it's like there's no expectation that it's ever going to be better, or should be better, or you deserve it to be better, or that somebody did this to you. Maybe there's a vague sense that, you know, somebody somewhere has kind of got their foot on your throat in some way, that no matter what you do, you're not ever going to quite be able to rise. You know, when you have those thoughts, you're just kind of like, oh, quit feeling sorry for myself. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like, particularly, you know, him being a professional wrestler and big in the 80s when that was a hedonistic time and wrestling was a sport where he probably was making some more money and life was more of a party and he was 20 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's that sense of, oh, things used to be great. Like things used to be a lot more fun. They used to be a lot better. All of that stuff is in there, and you could write papers about the metaphor going on in at all different parts of this movie. But it also succeeds, like Rocky does, it also succeeds as just one man's story. You know, I mean, he's a remarkable man, but in many ways, he's just an average Joe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
You know, and that's true of Marisa Tomei's character also. And that it manages to be both profound and slice of life, to me, is the biggest coup of this. It's like, wow, you really could write thesis papers about this.
Oh, yeah.
Almost a number of different parts of this movie. But it's also just a really good story and a really good set of performances.
It's ultimately a small film, you know.
Yes.
I mean, and I think it also shows us how our society views art and entertainment, in that our society only cares about the people at the top, basically. Because, you know, I've never been a big wrestling fan, but I think all people of our generation, so the 80s was, I watched wrestling when I was a kid. Did you watch it any, you know, with Hulk Hogan? And I mean, I was never a massive fan, but I watched it some.
Religiously. I mean, it was on TV.
Yeah. But I mean, as a small, you know, I grew out of it, you know, pretty early on, but it was a huge thing, you know, in the 80s, and it's still popular now. But you just see these guys, these other guys that he's wrestling with, that are these kind of regional wrestlers that are at the, you know, they're the bottom rung. And you have, you know, The Rock was a wrestler, and all these, you know, John Cena and all these guys that became big superstars. And then you have all these other guys that are traveling all around and making peanuts, but they're abusing their bodies. And we see a lot of that, you know, in explicit detail. But I just think it really shows how, you know, and I think it's sad that you have people who are artists and people working in entertainment, the vast majority who are maybe just eking out somewhat of a living, or they're not even making a living. They're just doing it because that's what they love. And then you have this separation of the people at the top who make lots and lots and lots of money, you know? And it's pretty much any form of art or entertainment. We have that, you know, if it's acting or it's painting or it's singing or whatever, you know.
That is depressing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Because it really, you know, it really rings true. You know, people are like having to spin up Patreon accounts and everything just to continue to make their albums or whatever it is. And
yeah.
And they could still have a record deal, you know? So it's like, it just feels really broken. It feels like the arts are it's just all exploitative.
Oh yeah. But like you said, ultimately, you know, even though this is a sad film, it's somewhat of a happy ending, because basically, so, you know, with the spoiler in this, he has the last match, and he has a heart attack earlier in the film, and the doctor says, you know, he can't wrestle anymore, but he decides he's going to do it. He first decides he's not going to, and then he decides to, and he has his final match against an Iron Sheik kind of a character
called the Ayatollah.
Ayatollah. And, his heart is failing while he's in the ring. And the very last shot of the film is his signature move was to climb up on the ropes and then jump, and he jumps, and
He sort of leaps over the camera in slow-mo and off screen, and then it goes to black, and we get Bruce Springsteen's incredible song, The Wrestler, that he agreed to let Aronofsky use for this.
Yeah. And ultimately, in his mind, the only real love in his life is the crowd. He's estranged from his daughter, and even he tries to have this relationship with Marisa Tomei, and so his only real love is in the ring,
and she shows up. And the reasons that she's hesitant are very clear to us, right? It's not that she doesn't like him. She does like him, right? But it also doesn't feel crazy. Like, he's not coming on aggressively, but he's coming on pretty consistently. And she's cautious for reasons that feel completely understandable.
Sure.
To a person in her position, and she hurts his feelings at least once. That scene's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That scene is incredible. But she sort of comes around. She shows up. She knows about his heart. And she knows that it's made clear that if he wrestles again, it's going to kill him. And he decides to go ahead and do it anyway. He says to her, the only place, the only place I don't get hurt is in the ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about that is I think the crowd is like, oh, they're not, they know it's entertainment. They're not really hurting each other. But of course, we get to see that they are really hurting each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the moves are fake. The atomic elbow and the things like that are designed. They're theatrical, right? But by the end stage, we got guys who are stapling him with a staple gun, and and they hit each other with chairs, and you're not faking that. That's wham, you hit somebody with a chair. So it's like it goes from this sort of 70s playtime kind of, off the top ropes, and you get your head hit and you go, oh, to actual blood and cuts and abrasions and bashings and being thrown out of the ring, right? The ring has got this sort of special floor that bounces, but the cement floor of whatever state. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing escalates over time until now he's 20 years older and now is a totally different, it's almost masochistic, game of how much abuse you can take, and they've got sort of cut men in the backstage who are sort of literally gluing him together and suturing him up. And I read one review that pointed out, he goes into the ring with literally a broken heart, right?
Yeah.
So she shows up and she's like, "I'm here, don't go." And he's like, this is where I belong. And he goes out in the ring and.
Well, and when right before he's going to go up on the top rope, or maybe he is on the top rope, he looks up to see if she's there, and she has left just because she can't stand to watch him.
She can't stand to watch him kill himself.
It's not because she doesn't want to be there for him. She just doesn't want to watch it. And he looks and sees that she's not there, and it's seemingly like, well, I don't have anything else.
Right.
I don't even have, she left. She gave
nothing,
up on me.
Nothing for me to climb down from here to. Like,
right.
I climb down from here and go to and do what for what, nobody there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Which again, that's, a heartbreaking little moment there, because it's not like she doesn't want to be there for him, So yeah,
but it underlines. It's like, well, we come to believe it, right? like, this is all you can do, man. This is what you're born to. This is what the people love you. This is what you are. And we come to believe it. We come to accept that as true.
Well, and you see this a lot. So, being somebody who loves movies, I like to watch interviews with actors, and you will hear a lot of actors say, this is the only thing that I can do. This is the only thing. And obviously these are people, again, at the top of the field, and so they manage to work it out, but you'll hear a lot of them say, I tried other jobs and I was terrible at them. I couldn't do them. And if I hadn't found this, I don't know what I would have done. And it's, I think most people, it's, we have things that we're passionate about and we want to do. And for lots of people, you ultimately wind up, you fall into whatever you fall into. Maybe it wasn't the thing that you had planned to do all of your life, but you kind of wonder what it would be like to be somebody that is just like, this is the only thing that I can do. I can't do anything else. And I'm going to do this no matter what, whether I make any money or not, whether it kills me. This is what I'm going to do. I can't do anything else. And I think that's an interesting thing to explore in a film. And somebody who had some success, but now, they're ultimately at the end of their life, and it hasn't really turned out the way they wanted it to, but they still, he lived on his own terms, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I love about it is there's a lot of dialectic in this. It's not either or. It's one thing, and it is also the apparent opposite. Because he does love doing it. Nobody's making him go in the ring.
Yeah.
And we don't see anyone in his life telling him that's his only option. He believes that's his only option. And from one angle, he does die. He chooses to do it. The doctor says, you almost died, and you might not be so lucky next time. Right? You have to stop. You can exercise, but that kind of intensity is basically going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So he tries to take on more hours at the thing, and he tries to have a relationship with Marisa Tomei. He tries to put it back together with his daughter, but he messes up with his daughter, and it just doesn't seem to come together with Marisa Tomei, despite the fact that by the time she shows back up, she hurts his feelings. And she shows up to apologize and to tell him not to do it, and that she's willing. She said, I'm here. I want to see where this could go. He's already all amped up, and they're chanting his name and they're playing his theme song. That's another great moment. They're standing there talking, and she says, what about your heart? What are you doing? And he's just about to respond. Like he's just about to say something heartfelt, and the lick, they start playing Sweet Child of Mine. So you hear that lick from the ring. His theme's like, and it's just the stadium, and the crowd goes nuts, and you can see that hook. He's just like, I gotta, that's my cue. I gotta go.
Yeah.
And he steps out through the curtain, and the spotlight hits him, and the crowd, such as it is, goes crazy. Oh, it's just such a great moment, though. It's like that once she almost had him, thinking like, well, maybe if there's you, there is something else. But then the ring was like, where are you going, man? Come on, showtime. It's just such a great, it's just a great moment. And your heart breaks too, because you go, oh man, I was close. And he does, up on those top ropes with his heart's hurting. And we see it, It's all very paint by numbers at that point. He looks back up to the balcony where they were standing before he came down the gangplank there, and she's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns back and he jumps, and that's it.
Another great scene is when he's going, and I don't know if it's the first day that he's going to he's going to work the deli counter, but we see him, he's like starts in the break room and he shoots it from behind him. So, the camera is following him as he winds through and he goes down the stairs, and it's kind of faint, but they have like the crowd noise as if, and it's as if he's going out, and he goes to, and they have the plastic slits or whatever
it's like a curtain
in the doorway to go out, and he pauses there for a moment like he's going to go out on stage,
and you're hearing the crowd, man. Ram, ram. It's called the ram, right?
Yeah. I thought that was a really
ram. And then he goes pushing out. It's like showtime, and it's the deli counter.
Yeah, I thought
and he
that
does
was
pretty
a really
well.
tremendous
He
scene.
does pretty well.
Does pretty well.
But eventually, there's this one woman that wants a potato salad. She's like, little more. He goes and gets some more, and she's like, little less. And he goes back, takes some out. She's like, little more. Just like 4 times.
And I think anybody that's ever dealt with the public, oh
my God,
we've all kind of had those feelings.
Well, but particularly when you're like, he has a relationship with the public, right? The public who has paid to come see him, and it's his adoring fans.
Right.
And this is another facet of the public, right? So in some ways, the wrestling is a service industry. He's a performer. He gets paid to put on a show, right? He's being paid for his service to give them what they want. And at the deli aisle, he's being paid to give them what they want, but it's a different them and it's a different want.
Yeah.
And in the ring, he can do no wrong. But at the deli counter, it must sort of feel like he can't, not that he can do no right, but he can do wrong. There's a certain, I don't know if you've ever waited tables, but it's like one real bad customer, and it's not necessarily, they could just be having a bad day, but it could ruin your whole day.
I never waited tables, and I know I have a lot of empathy for servers because it's something I know I would be terrible at. I just know I could not do that job, and so I have a lot of empathy for servers, and some people are just terrible, and can't be pleased. So, along those lines, I can remember, this movie makes me think, I can remember when I was a kid, I used to watch Siskel and Ebert. I would watch them every week, and they would talk a lot about how, and I can't think of a specific film, but they would talk a lot about how they wanted to see what people's jobs were like. They wanted to, they'd have a character they worked whatever kind of job, and they would complain that they wanted to see more about their work. And as a kid, I always thought, oh, how boring that would be. I only want to see escapism. And in this movie, you're seeing, him work 2 different jobs. But I think it's really interesting how he, again, not being a wrestling fan and not really caring much about that, getting to see what the lives are like of these lower level kind of regional wrestlers. And there's a sad scene where they're having like a meet and greet kind of a thing, and only a couple people show up for him, but you see him looking at the guys at the other tables, and they've got their videotapes and things, and one guy's in a wheelchair, and that's when he starts to, you could see kind of the realization of like, oh, this is where I'm gonna wind up.
In fact, I'm already here.
Yeah.
But I'm still, but a few people still come to have me sign something and take pictures with them. Nobody's coming to see these guys, but I'm sitting here I am. It's like, it's not like that's where I'm going to be one day. I'm like, oh wait, I'm here. There's a funny bit too. The reason he misses his date with his daughter, he forgets, is that this Ayatollah rematch was like the 20-year anniversary of like the big match at the peak of his career or whatever. And he thinks that, oh, this might lead to something, right? This might reignite some interest. So he's kind of feeling up, and he's out at, I think, I don't remember precisely. Has Marisa Tomei just spurned him? For whatever reason, yeah, he's out at a bar, and there's a woman who's coming on to him, much younger woman, who's coming on to him very strongly, and they do coke, right? And he ends up having sex with her in a bathroom, and it's very 80s.
Yeah.
And he wakes up she says something that at the time seems a little non sequitur. She's like, "You want to party like a fireman?" And he's like, well, "Hey," and he follows her into the bathroom. They do coke, and then they're having sex. Like in the public bathroom, a woman walks in, and she's like, "Oh, get a room," It's very wild. And then he wakes up, and what we realize is her bed, that it looks almost like the same bed she grew up in. It looks almost like a high school student's room, although this woman is not a high school student.
Right.
But there's just fireman paraphernalia. He's wearing a pair of fireman boots.
Yeah.
And there's fireman posters, and the wallpapered with fireman stuff. Like she's got a frightening fireman thing to a degree that you're just like, oh no. What happened here? So he peels off these boots, and he grabs his stuff, and she's in the shower, and he like sneaks out of the house. And realizes that he missed his daughter's, the dinner that his daughter had finally gotten excited about, rekindling their relationship. And that's it. That's the final straw with her. She's like, that's a great scene too. When she's like, she's like, look at me. And she looks him right in the eye. She's like, I never want to see you again. I never want to hear from you again. I don't care about your heart. I don't, oh my God.
Yeah.
And his performance is like, he's crushed. He's destroyed that he screwed this up, He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't try to explain it. He doesn't try to brush it off.
He messed up.
He knows, and he regrets it. But that's just so rough, because I think we've all been in there where you're like, wow, I did this. I screwed this situation up, and I've got nothing and nobody to blame for it but myself. Ugh, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Is there anything else that we haven't covered? Like you said, there's so many facets to this that.
I mean, I think there's a lot, but I think in some ways it's sort of it's a movie that kind of splits the difference between Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, right? Because
I think
there's elements of performance. There's elements of the performer's relationship with the public and the performer's relationship with themselves. I think there's, substance issues across all three movies in some ways, and mental health issues across all three movies in some ways. Requiem for a Dream is just so, I think it's so difficult to watch. It's so upsetting and depressing and bleak. And Black Swan is scary. It's shot more like a horror film, shot more conventionally with camera, a more traditionally stylized film. But it also talks about, the sort of abuse to one's body that a form like ballet that they subject themselves to, and what it does to their body. And in this one, I feel like all of those themes are present, but it really tries to focus on the sort of psyche of this cultural, so we have somebody who's a performer, and it is the individual, but it is also what the individual comes to represent. And it is the sort of tension between the persona that he plays, the commercialized object that this person, right, the persona, and the person. And I think that in some ways it is the most successful in terms of highlighting that relationship of all three of those movies, all three of which I really like. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't necessarily you like his character in this, whereas I wouldn't necessarily say in the other two movies you necessarily like the characters.
Right.
You feel for them, but they're not necessarily,
the goal is not
identify.
The goal in those films doesn't feel like it's about trying to understand what it's like to be them. And I think in this one, he really succeeds in making us empathize with this character, to really feel for him and really see that he's trying and that he's not good at everything and that he does understand, that his actions have consequences, but that he's just not, and his frustration at not being able to just be something he's not, he doesn't blame other people. Like, he's not grousing about how he got a raw deal.
No.
He turns it all inward. And I think that's actually very relatable too.
Sure.
No, I think that for as depressing a movie as this ultimately is, it doesn't feel it's sad. But it just feels, I say a tragedy because it just feels like there was no other way that this could have happened. It felt inevitable. It's like, well,
couldn't play out any other way.
This guy's going to die in the ring. I mean, and you don't want the character to have some other arc. And if he'd have found some happy life and they'd have somehow gotten out of the trailer park, like, how was that going to work?
Yeah.
Right. How was their relationship? Was he going to move in with her? It's a romantic thing, and that's beautiful, and that felt real. But at the end of the day, how much water does that actually carry? Like, they're both dug in so deep into these kind of hopeless feeling situations. Does tying yourself together help that? Well, that's a depressing thought, but
yeah, but I mean, it's so much more. We're so used to the Hollywood version
love
of
finds a
where
way,
just the
right?
people
Love
meet
solves
and they
everything. Yep.
Yeah. And this is a lot more like real life because not everybody is right for each other, know, and with Mickey Rourke himself, I've always thought it was a little sad. I mean, I'm sure he's doing fine, but that he didn't, this was a bit of a comeback, sort of comparable. I think of it sort of like in terms of John Travolta with Pulp Fiction. It wasn't like Mickey Rourke had completely gone away, but he got so much attention from this, and he went on and he was the villain in Iron Man 2. But I don't know that he parlayed this into a huge comeback. Whereas Marisa Tomei, I mean, she's in the Spider-Man movies, and she's had a pretty consistent career. But I always thought it was a little sad that Mickey Rourke just showed. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what kind of films after this that necessarily that he fit into, but I mean, he just does such a tremendous performance here. And
well, the other thing I really like about Aronofsky as a director is he seems to really have a clear sense of the actors that he wants to work with. And I think he must meet with them and have conversations about what he's going for and the way they work. And once he feels like this is a good fit, he really seems to invest him. Again, I'm just intuiting this from what I see on screen. But when a director bothers to really work with actors, and some actors have the discipline to go, and Daniel Day-Lewis comes to mind as a person that just does meticulous personal work in terms of preparation to the degree that some people make fun of it, right? Some people make fun of how in character he goes or whatever beforehand. And all I would say to that is, let's look at the films. It seems to be working for him. So maybe he's onto something, or, maybe not every actor works that way, but he's getting nominated for Oscars because those performances are crazy. I think when a director is willing to spend that kind of time working with an actor, you're going to get better results.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that starts with a careful selection process. So, I mean, and we see directors working with the same talent more than once. Often they say, oh, I really, I liked working with that person. I want to work with that person again. Like, we understand each other. But
Aronofsky hasn't seen, he hasn't really worked with characters or with actors over and over again.
Yeah, but he's got you still haven't seen the Noah one, but
yeah.
What's her face is in that from Requiem.
Oh, okay.
And I guess you're right. I guess there isn't a bunch of repeat.
And like you're talking about, what Marisa Tomei put into this, and then Mickey Rourke too. I don't know how much time it would take to work with wrestlers to become convincing enough on camera but it seems very convincing. And
it's completely convincing.
And I don't know what was said about this at the time, but the shape that he got in at his age, he had to have been taking steroids. I mean, just like the characters in the film. I mean, I don't know that would be possible without steroids.
You forget it because he's so big and bulky. It looks like he's made out of bubble gum, right? He's this huge He-Man looking with below his shoulder blades, bottle blonde, the full on good guy, the Hulk Hogan hair, that kind of corn silk yellow dyed hair. And he just looks so much the part that you forget it. And then as a guy, he's just this kind of like, almost like the dude. He's so easygoing and gentle and mild, soft-spoken. And all the scenes backstage where the wrestlers are all talking to each other, they're all a bunch of sweethearts. Like, they're all like, oh, hey, man, wow. That's so great to meet you. You're the reason why I got into this business. Like, hey, man, I saw you on, when you did your fight against whatever. It's like, you've got a lot of potential, man. You're really going places. If you stick with this, like, they're supportive and they're friendly and they're nurturing and they're complimentary. And the one guy, he sees one big guy who's all jacked. He's like, oh, look at you. You clearly crazy. He's like, oh, no. It's like, no. This, you got it, man. Look at this. And so it's so, and when they plan out what they're going to do in the ring, and it's improvisational, but they sort of sketch out, we'll do a number 5 and then a number 3, and we'll do one of those. And then in the ring, you see the personas. There's always a big bad guy and he's the good guy. And then afterwards, it's hugs and handshakes and high fives and let's have a beer while the guys are like stitching them up.
Yeah.
And it's all feels completely plausible. It all feels completely real. And it's it's like, oh, I've never seen behind the curtain here before. It all feels true. It does. It feels as true as a documentary. And part of that is the camera. But part of that is just the performance from everybody. It's not just the leads. It's all the bit parts feel real too. And I wouldn't be surprised if he cast a bunch of circuit wrestlers, who actually do, because that's not a body type. People don't. Dave Bautista's aren't walking around.
No,
maybe in gyms, but they're not necessarily good actors.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if some of those other dudes are actual wrestlers.
Probably, yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it sounds to me like it's 2 big thumbs up from us. I can't believe I haven't seen this until now. I sort of wish I had just bought it, because I definitely will want to watch it again. I'm not going to rush and watch it again. It's it's not heavy.
It's not a movie
it's
that
like,
you put on in the background while you're folding
laundry. You want to pay
something,
attention to it. There's just every beat is so good. I do feel like there's probably a lot I missed that now, having now seen the movie, I'll go back and be, oh, look at that. They're laying the groundwork for that, you know? Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. Like, subscribe, send us a comment. All of that fun stuff. We're on the socials. Do you have a sense of what you want to do for next time?
You know, I was thinking about, and I haven't even looked to see what the streaming situation is on this, but I was reading on Twitter, not reading, it was a video that I saw, that LA Confidential, and I don't know when this was, but it was one of the producers or something in this video, said they tried to do an LA Confidential 2, and they got a lot of the actors, you know, were willing to come back, and they pitched it to all the studios and nobody would do it. And it was just like, this is kind of amazing. But anyway, that got me thinking about LA Confidential, which is a movie that I've never seen. And have you seen it before?
No.
Oh, okay. Is it something that you have any interest in watching?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we'll check and see what the streaming, but it's a movie that I've always wanted to see. And so that might be kind of fun since neither of us has seen it.
Okay.
I think it's a noir, basically, sort of, I think. I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I just know it's LA in like the 1940s and it's a crime thing, but it has a great cast.
Yeah. We'll investigate what the streaming, I would think.
Is there anything else that you can think of that have you watched anything since we've last talked?
I watched Ahsoka and I have been watching,
I still have,
I'm
only two in. Yeah. Are you still into it?
Yep. I'm still into it. I've been watching The Crown.
Oh, okay.
Which is really good.
I watched that at the time. That was from a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
I watched that back then.
Very different. I watched. Did we talk about Arrival? Did we do Arrival?
No, we haven't done Arrival. I think maybe we've talked about it in other episodes.
I have seen it before, and I watched it again. And have you seen it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it in the movie theater.
I mean, I think that's a really good movie. That's Denis Villeneuve.
We could do that one sometime.
But like I say, I just watched that. So I mean, if you wanted to check it out again, we could do that. Bada bing, or
let's see about LA Confidential, what the streaming situation is. I would assume it's.
I think I did see LA Confidential. I think I saw LA Confidential when it came out.
One with Guy Pearce
it's Guy Pearce, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the first I ever became aware of Guy Pearce. I think I saw that even before I saw Memento.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never seen it, so
but it's certainly been a long time. And it's Guy Pearce and Australian
to see.
Gladiator.
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe,
yeah. I randomly watched. I only watched the first episode, but Tubi has Miami Vice, the original Miami Vice series, which was one of those shows where I wanted to like. It came out when we were kids. I wanted to like it, but I watched it kind of here and there, but was never that into it. And so I watched the first episode, which first episode is a 2-parter. I haven't watched the second, and it's about how they became partners. Tubbs came from New York, and man, I don't know if you've watched any of those.
Not since we were kids and it was on TV.
I don't know if it keeps that consistency. And of course, it's Michael Mann, but man, the first episode is fantastic.
I'll have to check that out.
And it's on Tubi, so if you can stand the ads, you can watch it for free. It's not like a million ads in it, but you can really see how. I mean, it does not. I expected it to be corny, and it's definitely 80s, with the look and the music and all that kind of stuff.
There's one part where blazers with pushed up sleeves. Yeah,
there's one part where Tubbs is in a strip club, and the stripper is dancing to. Somebody's watching me, and like he's singing along to it and stuff. So, there's that. But beyond that, it is not corny. And you can really see, wow, how this that it probably really changed television because
It did.
it
I
just
think
looked,
we were too young to understand it, to really
I think we were too
appreciate.
young to understand it. Yeah.
I think we were looking for the A-Team, and
Yeah.
we got Miami Vice, and there was a lot of style, but we didn't. All
There's
of the
a lot
other
of-
stuff was kind of going over our head. But it was an
There's a lot of style,
enormously seminal show at the time. Like, it was incredibly
but
popular.
I was impressed with how good the acting is and just the camera work. I mean, it's very cinematic, and I mean, it looks like a film, and you can just really see how it probably influenced everything afterwards. I don't know. I don't want to like heap too much praise on it, but I was really impressed with it. It's like, wow, this is good.
Maybe I'll check it out. Take a look at the
So
Miami
I'm
Vice.
gonna, it's pretty easy to. Of course, it's the old school film or old school TV format where it's 22 episodes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. I think there's 6 seasons, but yeah, I would highly recommend checking, at least based on the first episode. It's great. So
cool.
It's interesting to go back and watch it now, because
Yeah.
you can relate much more to because like Crockett has a bad relationship. He's divorced, and there's a really great scene where it's sort of like this movie where his partner dies, and so he's late for his son's birthday, and he's drunk. And so a little bit of parallel, with this movie that we watched. So yeah, I would highly recommend checking it out.
Cool. I am getting pinged by the powers that be that I must now do.
Yeah, we talked for a long time.
Family duties.
Alrighty.
But always a pleasure. And so we're not sure what we're going to do next time, but it'll be something interesting, possibly LA Confidential, possibly The Arrival, possibly something else. And unless you have anything else you'd like to add.
Nope, that's it.
The two of us will talk to you all next week.